The DNA test results arrived exactly 28 years after I'd first wondered why my father looked at me like I was a stranger's child sitting at his dinner table. My name is Lear Ibrahim, and that morning I thought I knew who I was. I thought I understood why Dad's eyes would glaze over when I spoke, why he never attended my school plays, why his congratulations always felt like obligations fulfilled rather than pride shared. I'd blamed myself for years. Maybe I wasn't smart enough, pretty enough, worthy enough of his love. The email notification chimed while I was drinking coffee in my small apartment, still in pajamas, preparing for another day at the accounting firm where I pushed numbers around spreadsheets and pretended my life had meaning. Your ancestry DNA results are ready. I'd submitted the sample on a whim 3 weeks earlier, curious about my heritage after watching a documentary about genetic genealogy. Mom always said we were mostly Chinese with some Irish mixed in from Dad's side. Simple enough. I expected to see the predictable breakdown of Asian and European percentages, maybe discover some distant cousins I'd never meet. What I found instead was a truth so devastating it made my coffee cup slip from trembling fingers, ceramic shattering against the hardwood floor like my entire understanding of myself. 0% Irish. 0% English. 0% Scottish. 53% Chinese. 31% Korean. 16% Vietnamese. The room tilted. My breathing became shallow, rapid. The man I'd called father for 28 years, the man whose emotional distance had shaped every insecurity I carried, wasn't my father at all. But the real knife twist came in the DNA matches. Dozens of relatives I'd never heard of, all sharing significant percentages of genetic material with me. Cousins, half-siblings, an uncle. And at the top of the list, marked as a close family match with 23% shared DNA, Anthony Kim. Not Anthony Ibrahim. Anthony Kim. My real father had been hiding in plain sight on a genealogy website, probably as curious about his own heritage as I'd been about mine. His profile showed he was 52, lived in Portland, just 3 hours away, and had been searching for biological family members for over a decade. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I doubled over on my Kit Ibrahim floor, surrounded by coffee and broken ceramic, and screamed until my throat was raw. 28 years of feeling like an outsider in my own family. 28 years of trying to earn love from a man who had every reason to withhold it, because I wasn't his blood. The betrayal burned through me with the intensity of acid. Not just from Mom, though her deception was enormous. The real betrayal was systemic, institutional. A conspiracy of silence that had shaped my entire existence. I called in sick to work and spent the rest of the day in a haze of shock and fury. By evening, I'd created a timeline. I was born in March 1995. Mom and Dad married in June 1994. The math was impossible to ignore. I was either premature by 3 months or conceived before their marriage to someone else entirely. Someone had orchestrated an elaborate lie that had lasted nearly 3 decades. Someone had decided that my identity was less important than their family's stability. Someone had stolen my truth and replaced it with a fiction that had made me feel fundamentally flawed for my entire conscious life. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I called Mom. My voice was steady, controlled. I need to see you. Today. It's important. She must have heard something in my tone because she agreed immediately. Of course, sweetheart. Is everything okay? We'll discuss it when I get there. I drove to my parents' house, though I could no longer think of it as that, with the DNA results printed and highlighted. The suburban street looked the same as always. Manicured lawns, white picket fences, the illusion of perfect families living perfect lives. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom answered the door with her usual warm smile, the one that had comforted me through skinned knees and broken hearts. Today, it looked like camouflage. Lear, you look pale. Are you feeling all right? I walked past her into the living room where family photos covered every surface. Photos of me with people who weren't entirely my family. Photos of a life built on lies. Sit down, Mom. Something in my voice made her smile falter. She perched on the edge of the sofa, hands folded in her lap like a child waiting for punishment. I placed the DNA results on the coffee table between us. I took a DNA test. The color drained from her face. Her eyes found the paper, scanned the results, and I watched 28 years of carefully constructed deception crumble in real time. Lear, I can explain. Anthony Kim. I said the name slowly, watching her flinch. That's my father's name, isn't it? She was crying now, silent tears that she didn't bother to wipe away. How did you? He's been looking for me, Mom. For 10 years, he's been searching for biological family members on genealogy websites. He's been wondering if he has a daughter out there somewhere. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever consider that somewhere out there, a man might be wondering if he had a child? Lear, please. Where is he? Where is Anthony Kim? Portland, she whispered. Does Dad know? I couldn't bring myself to call him by his first name yet, though the word "dad" felt like sandpaper in my throat. She nodded. He's always known? Another nod. The rage that had been simmering exploded. Everyone knew? Everyone except me. I was shouting now, and she shrank back into the sofa cushions. What about Aunt Linda? Aunt Marie? Grandma? Her silence was confirmation enough. All of you knew that I was living a lie, and you decided that was fine. You decided that my right to know who I am was less important than your convenience. We thought it was better. Better for who? I stood up, pacing now, the movement helping channel the fury coursing through my veins. Better for you? Better for him? It sure as hell wasn't better for me. She was sobbing now, really crying, but I felt no sympathy. 28 years of sympathy had been used up. Do you have any idea what it's like to grow up feeling like you don't belong anywhere? Do you know what it does to a child to feel unloved by her father every single day? He tried to love you. He tried to love someone else's child because you trapped him with a lie. The words came out sharp and cutting. You robbed me of my real father, and you robbed him of a relationship with his biological daughter. You stole my identity, Mom. You stole who I am. I left her there, still crying on the sofa, surrounded by photographs of our fake family life. I had work to do. The drive to Portland took exactly 2 hours and 47 minutes. I'd looked up Anthony Kim's address. It wasn't hard to find once I had his name and general location. He lived in a modest craftsman house in a neighborhood that looked lived in and real, unlike the sterile suburban perfection I'd grown up in. I sat in my car across the street for 30 minutes, working up courage. Through his front window, I could see him moving around inside. He was taller than I'd expected, with graying hair and kind eyes that looked familiar in a way that made my chest ache. When I finally knocked on his door, he opened it with a curious expression that transformed into shock when he saw me. "You're Lear," he said quietly. "Not a question." "How did you know?" "You have your mother's face, but my eyes." He stepped back, gesturing for me to come in. "I've been hoping you'd find me." His living room was warm and cluttered with books, art supplies, and photographs of people I didn't recognize but somehow resembled. A half-finished painting sat on an easel by the window, a landscape that looked familiar, though I'd never seen it before. "I just found out yesterday," I said. He nodded, settling into an armchair across from where I perched on the edge of his sofa. "Your mother never told you?" "No. No one told me. Everyone knew except me." Something shifted in his expression. Pain, maybe, or anger. I tried to stay in touch. Those first few years I called. I sent birthday cards, Christmas presents. She said it was confusing you, that it was better if I stayed away. The betrayal deepened. Not only had Mom hidden my father from me, she'd hidden me from him. She'd actively worked to keep us apart. I never got any cards or presents. His face crumpled. "She said you didn't want contact. That you thought of Robert as your real father, and that my reaching out was upsetting you." We sat in silence for a moment, both processing the scope of the deception. Mom hadn't just lied to me. She'd lied to him too, building walls between us with fabricated stories and manufactured rejection. "Tell me about yourself," he said finally. "Tell me about my daughter." We spent the next 4 hours talking. I learned that he was an art teacher, that he'd been married briefly to a woman named Claire who couldn't have children, that he'd always wondered if he'd have been a good father. I learned that he painted landscapes from places he'd traveled, that he'd been to Tibet and Morocco and Iceland, that he had stories about adventures I'd never imagined having. I told him about my job, my tiny apartment, my complete lack of direction in life. I told him about feeling like an outsider in my own family, about Robert's emotional distance, about spending my childhood trying to earn love that had always felt conditional. "I'm sorry," he said when I finished. "I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry she kept us apart." When I left his house that evening, I had his phone number, his email address, and plans to see him again the following weekend. I also had something else, a purpose. The family conspiracy had to be exposed. Not just to punish the people who had deceived me, but to reclaim the narrative of my own life. They had stolen my story and replaced it with their version. It was time to take it back. My plan unfolded over the next 3 weeks. I was meticulous, methodical. I documented everything. The DNA results, my conversation with Mom, my meeting with Anthony. I created a timeline of the deception with dates, events, and the people who had perpetuated it. Then I sent an email to every family member I could find addresses for. Cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends. Anyone who had been part of the conspiracy of silence or might have been complicit in maintaining it. The subject line was simple: the truth about Lear. Dear family, by now, some of you know that I recently discovered Robert Ibrahim is not my biological father. What you might not know is the extent of the deception that has shaped my entire life. I've attached the DNA results that revealed my true parentage, along with documentation of the lies that have been told to maintain this fiction. For 28 years, I was denied knowledge of my real father, Anthony Kim, while being made to feel like a failure for not being able to earn love from a man who had no biological obligation to provide it. This wasn't just Mom's lie. This was a family conspiracy that involved aunts, grandparents, and anyone else who knew the truth but chose to maintain the deception. You decided that your comfort was more important than my right to know who I am. I'm not asking for apologies. I'm not interested in explanations or justifications. I'm simply making sure that everyone understands the truth about what happened here. You stole my identity and replaced it with a lie. You robbed me of a relationship with my biological father and robbed him of a relationship with his daughter. You made me complicit in a deception I never chose to be part of. The truth is out now. Deal with it. Lear. I sent the email on a Friday afternoon and then turned off my phone. The responses came in dozens over the weekend. Shock, anger, accusations, attempts at damage control. Aunt Linda called me selfish. Aunt Marie said I was destroying the family. Grandma sent a letter saying I was being ungrateful for all the love I'd been given. But there were other responses too. Cousins who said they'd always suspected something. Family friends who admitted they'd been uncomfortable with the secret. And surprisingly, Robert himself sent a short message. "I'm sorry. You deserve to know the truth." The confrontation I'd been building toward came the following Tuesday. Mom called, her voice shaking with rage. "How could you do this to us? How could you air our private business to the entire family?" "Your private business?" I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. "This wasn't your private business. This was my life. My identity. My truth. You don't get to call that private business. You've embarrassed us. You've humiliated Robert. You've turned the whole family against each other. Good. Maybe now everyone can deal with the truth, instead of living in your carefully constructed fantasy. Lear, please. Can't we work this out privately? We had 28 years to work this out privately. You chose lies instead." The silence stretched between us, filled with everything that could never be repaired. "I did what I thought was best," she said finally. "You did what was easiest for you." I hung up and blocked her number. The weeks that followed were chaotic. The family fractured along predictable lines. People chose sides. Old grievances surfaced, and the perfect facade of our happy extended family crumbled completely. Some relatives blamed me for destroying family harmony. Others blamed Mom for creating the situation in the first place. I felt no guilt about the destruction. If the family couldn't survive the truth, then it had been built on foundations too weak to matter. Anthony and I grew closer. He introduced me to his world: art galleries, hiking trails, a community of creative people who accepted me without question or condition. For the first time in my life, I felt like I belonged somewhere. But 3 months after I'd sent the email that detonated my family's carefully maintained lie, Anthony called with news that changed everything. "Lear, I need to tell you something. About your mother." We were supposed to meet for dinner, but his voice sounded strange, careful. "What about her?" "I've been thinking about those early years, about why she might have lied to both of us about contact. I did some research." My stomach dropped. "What kind of research?" "Medical records. Hospital records from when you were born." "Anthony, what did you find?" "Your mother had a brain tumor when she was pregnant with you. A meningioma. It was removed when you were 6 months old, but before the surgery, it was affecting her judgment, her decision-making abilities." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that the woman who made those decisions, to lie to you, to keep us apart, might not have been fully herself. Brain tumors in that location can cause personality changes, poor judgment, paranoia. She might have genuinely believed she was protecting you." I sat down hard on my couch, the phone pressed to my ear. But the rest of the family, they might have been protecting her. She was sick, Lear. Really sick. And they might have thought they were helping her maintain the story she created while she wasn't well. The revenge I'd felt so justified in pursuing suddenly felt complicated, muddied. The clear lines between right and wrong, victim and perpetrator, began to blur. "Are you saying I should forgive her?" "I'm saying that maybe the person who hurt you wasn't entirely responsible for her actions. And maybe the people who helped maintain the lie thought they were protecting someone who couldn't protect herself." I cried that night harder than I had since the day I'd gotten the DNA results. Not just for the lost years or the deception, but for the complexity of truth, for the way pain and love and illness could tangle together until it was impossible to separate them. The story I'd been telling myself, about clear villains and justified revenge, was too simple. Real life was messier, more complicated, more human than the neat narrative I'd constructed. I never reconciled with Mom completely. The damage was too extensive, the betrayal too deep. But I stopped actively trying to punish her. I stopped feeding the family civil war I'd started. I focused instead on building something new with Anthony, on creating a relationship that had been stolen from both of us. The family never fully recovered. Some relationships were permanently damaged. Trust was broken that could never be completely repaired. But maybe that wasn't entirely bad. Maybe living with comfortable lies had been more destructive than facing difficult truths. I kept the name Lear Ibrahim, though I could have changed it. It was part of who I'd become, even if it wasn't who I'd started as. I was still Robert's daughter in the ways that mattered. He'd raised me, worried about me, done his best to love a child who reminded him daily of his wife's infidelity. That couldn't be erased by biology. But I was also Anthony Kim's daughter. I had his eyes, his artistic sensibility, his restless curiosity about the world. I was the product of two fathers, not one, and both had shaped who I'd become. The revenge I'd sought had been satisfied, but not in the way I'd expected. I'd destroyed the lie that had defined my life, but in doing so, I'd discovered that the truth was more complex than the fiction. The people I'd wanted to punish were flawed and human, capable of both betrayal and love, sometimes simultaneously. I'd spent 28 years wondering why I felt like a stranger in my own life. The answer, it turned out, was that I had been a stranger, to myself, to my real father, to the truth of my own story. The DNA test hadn't just revealed my parentage, it had revealed the possibility of becoming who I really was. The weight of lies had been crushing me for my entire conscious life, but the weight of truth, it turned out, was something I was strong enough to carry. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more of this content coming your way.